From the director of The Invisible Man, we have a new 2025 American horror film called Wolfman. Directed by Leigh Whannell and co-written with Corbett Tuck, this movie stars Christopher Abbott as Blake Lovell, Julia Gardner as his wife Charlotte, and Matilda Firth as Ginger. Now, this plot centers around Blake, who returns to his childhood home in rural Oregon with his wife and daughter after his estranged father, Grady, has been declared dead. Shortly after arriving, they are attacked by a werewolf, leading to Blake's gradual transformation into the creature. As Blake's condition worsens, Charlotte must protect their daughter from the growing threat within their own family. The film predominantly utilizes practical effects to portray its titular creature. Whannell collaborated with prosthetics designer, gonna mess up the name, I'm gonna put it up here, Aryan? I'm not even going to try the last name, to create a tangible and realistic werewolf, drawing inspiration from classic horror films like The Thing and The Fly. The application of prosthetics on the Wolfman took anywhere from 2.5 to 7.5 hours, depending on the transformation stage. While the film emphasizes practical effects, some CGI was employed to enhance certain aspects, such as depicting the character's increasingly animalistic perspective. This included adding haze, computer-generated insects, translucent skin to reveal veins, and flashing eyes with retroreflective highlights. So all in all, a little CGI was used while trying to maintain practical effects to capture that classical American horror. Currently on opening weekend, Rotten Tomatoes gives this a 53% approval rating by critics and a 59% approval rating by audience members. I personally believe that this film could have done more to scare and grip the audience. It's a fine movie on its own, but this isn't one I'm telling my friends that we have to go see so we can talk about it ASAP. I would have loved to see more character development with Charlotte and Ginger, and there just wasn't time to do any of that. How the Wolfman is portrayed in this movie is its biggest strength, in my opinion. All in all, I would give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Spoiler alert, now we're going to talk about spoilers for Wolfman. Here we go. You have been warned. 3, 2, 1... We all knew it. We all knew it about halfway through. The werewolf that was taunting the family was the dad. The dad's been missing. It's around the house, around the same property. The wolf was the dad. Once the main character, the dad, bit off his own foot after being stuck in the bear trap, we knew he wasn't going to be saved. You're too far gone. You're not going to eat your own flesh to remove your foot from a bear trap and not bleed out and survive this in the end. One thing that I was disappointed with was I thought there was going to be foreshadowing from the beginning of the film. When the kid is with his dad and they're walking through the woods and he goes to touch one of the mushrooms and his dad was like, "Do not touch that. Those are death cap mushrooms. If you eat one of those, you'll be deader before you know it," or something like that. Like he's trying to scare the shit out of his kid. And I'm like, oh, okay, like those will kill anything. Like they'll kill you fast. So I wonder if, like, when you get to the end of this movie, you're gonna have the dad transforming into the werewolf, and he's too far gone, and he's like to the point where he's like, gonna start coming after the family, even though he wants to protect them. And it's just gonna be a moment where like a little bit of humanity is left in him, and he's like, I can't do this. This shouldn't go on. And he goes to the woods and he eats one of the mushrooms to kill himself. I thought that would have been perfect foreshadowing. Never happened. Never happened once. Now, I saw this last night and I wasn't really impressed. I'm not gonna lie. There were like 2 parts where I felt like I was gonna fall asleep. The tempo of the movie was weird. There were times where like they're really building it up and then it's just like it just maintains. It doesn't like ride like a roller coaster. It didn't ebb and flow the way I wanted it to. I wanted this to be scarier than it was, and I wanted it to be less safe than it was. I never felt like the daughter was in any danger. Every time the movie panned over to her, the vibe was just like, well, she's not going to get attacked. She's just like this pure and innocent daughter. She's putting her hand to the werewolf's forehead, her dad's forehead, and being like, "Dad, what am I thinking?" And you're like, the werewolf could just bite off her hand any second, and you never felt that. Like, you could imagine that would happen, but the film did not give off that vibe. I wanted the daughter to be in a little bit more danger than she was, and it didn't happen. Same thing with Charlotte. Every time Charlotte was in danger and she's standing toe-to-toe with Granddad Werewolf or Papa Werewolf, whatever you want to call it, every time she was standing face-to-face with him, Dad would come over and stop him. And then it was just like they repeated that 3 times in a row. The dad stops Granddad Werewolf overpowers him, comes after Charlotte, Dad comes back, tackles. It just rinse repeated over and over again. There's no time where, Charlotte's got to go toe-to-toe with this thing, aside of just scraping him twice with a butcher knife. The thing I didn't like about Charlotte's character, first of all, my biggest gripe was, you start the movie, your protagonist is the boy who grew up, saw the Wolfman with his dad, grew estranged from his dad, and you're like, wow, okay, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. And you gear up the first half of this movie thinking he's your protagonist, only for halfway through this movie for it to force you to have Charlotte as your protagonist. There's not a lot of time to grow. Charlotte's backstory is she's not as much in love with the husband as they used to be. She doesn't feel like a good mom. None of that gets repaired by the end of the movie. None of that even gets touched on, reflected, no growth whatsoever. So that feels empty to me. Charlotte is a city girl. She knows nothing about this. She's about to go into Oregon, into the woods, what it seems like to be for the first time. When shit's hitting the fan, she remembers, oh, there was a set of keys in the basement. The basement doesn't seem like that's where you keep your truck keys, but sure, that's fine. She finds them in a crate in the basement, and then goes to grab a perfectly healthy looking battery. It's been months/years since they declared the dad dead. And you have a battery that looks like you just bought it from Walmart 2 hours ago. And perfectly fine jumper cables that don't look rusted at all. They look brand new as well. Jump a truck just fine. And not to mention, after you jump the truck, and I think there was a silhouette at one point where you did see the werewolf kind of pan. I think there's like a shadow of it going behind the truck. But it was in like the back passenger seat right behind the driver's side. And you're like, that's going to attack Charlotte any second. And it never happens. And you're like, oh. And then she does the whole thing where she finally gets the truck started after trying for 3 or 4 times, and then uses the wipers, and then boom, the werewolf's there. The werewolf's not going to sit there for dramatic effect and then attack them. The werewolf is hunting them, and then going to attack. So it's parts of that that made the movie feel, I don't know, like it had holes that they could have done better. When I realized this was a nod to American horror movies and they were playing more on the practical effects to sell the movie, okay, I get it. That's why I give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching my first movie review. I'm going to try to put out a movie review every weekend, and a little heads up, next weekend we are going to be reviewing Presence. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe and like, and I'll see you again soon.